of Engie, Chairman of Paris EUROPLACE. Gérard, thank you once again for your strong support to the activity of Paris EUROPLACE, who will introduce our International Financial Forum. Gérard.
Thank you, Arnaud. Good morning, everyone. Mrs. the Minister, Mrs. Ségolène Royal, Mr. the Governor, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really delighted to have you all this morning. And I would like to thank you for accepting our invitation to our annual International Financial Forum in Paris. May I underline that this two-day event gathers representatives of more than 50 countries from all around the world, with strong representations from the UK and European countries, from the US, as well as Asian countries, including China and Japan, and also from Africa. I also wish to address a warm welcome to all our eminent speakers, and more particularly to Ségolène Royal, former Minister of the Environment, Energy and Sea of France, and President of COP21, which played a prominent role for the Paris Agreement in 2015. And Mr. Christian Noyer, nominated as Ambassador for the Brexit by our Prime Minister, as well as Mr. Jamie Dimon, Chairman and CEO of JP Morgan Chase, and Mr. Stuart Gulliver, Group Chief Executive of HSBC. We will participate to this morning's last session, and last but not least, our French Prime Minister, Édouard Philippe, who will co-chair the lunch session and deliver an important speech. Today is an exceptional momentum. Our forum has a particular significance as it occurs in the context of major changes all around the world: the climate Brexit of the USA, the Brexit in Europe, and finally the elections of a new president, young, modern, connected, pro-European and pro-business president in France, Emmanuel Macron. French voters have placed the European project at the heart of their new ambition. It is a real message, not only of optimism, but also of exigence to reinforce, better explain, and share a common European project, a new project. This will be the theme of our second plenary session this morning. Our first statement is the return of international investors to Europe due to uncertainties in the US and in the global world, as well as the acceleration of economic growth in Europe, and particularly in France. This point has been strongly underlined by the representatives of the US banks who attended our New York Forum last May. Our second issue relates to the strengthening of Europeans' position in the global capital markets. This is the theme of a very recent survey by Oliver Wyman, which reminds us that Europe is still facing today the persistence of fragmented markets, with a small share, in average, of the European economy being financed by capital markets, which is 20% compared to the 80% by bank financing. Even if France, for example, already records a 40% ratio for capital markets, which is the double of the European average. The priority is to hasten the European Capital Market Union, which means to undertake new actions, develop long-term savings and investments in equity markets, accelerate the diversification of the financing channels for corporates, including SMEs, improve the competitiveness of the exchange and market infrastructures, expand innovation in financial services, develop fintech and green finance, and finally amplify the integration of European markets. Paris EUROPLACE is actively involved in the European working groups which tackle these different issues. The context of Brexit and a potential reduction in the size of the City of London as a consequence reinforce today the necessity to enhance a strong European action plan. This is the view of all market players, including European corporates. The second topic I would like to address relates to the Paris offer in the context of Brexit. May I remind you once again that Paris EUROPLACE was strongly in favor of Remain, all during the British campaign. But now that the UK people have voted in favor of Brexit, the process seems to accelerate. The negotiations have started. At the end, we don't know if it will be a hard Brexit, but it has to be a clear Brexit. We are convinced that Paris can offer win-win opportunities to international companies wishing to develop their activities in the post-Brexit European Union. First and foremost, let me highlight that France has already significantly improved the competitiveness over the last 2 years. According to a recent survey by EY, the number of international locations in France has already increased by 30% over the last 2 years to reach a record of 780 projects per year. And France, as from today, benefits from a much improved recognition by international investors and businesses, with innovation and the development of startups as its #1 competitive advantage. France becoming a startup nation with a pool of talents and young entrepreneurs. More particularly regarding financial services, Paris benefits from at least 3 major cards compared to other cities in the EU 27, EU post-Brexit. Paris is the only global city in terms of size and economic weight of the region Île-de-France, and is backed by the 5th largest global economy, not mentioning the Greater Paris project, which attracts international investors. Paris is the #1 financial center in the EU 27, with the presence of large French and international corporates, more than in London, more than in Frankfurt. And those international corporates located in Paris are the clients of international bankers and insurers. And Paris is the city of innovation, with a strong acceleration of the development of research and the development of the French tech, more especially the fintech, and the presence of a huge talent pool. Paris EUROPLACE has produced an in-depth analysis of the different financial sectors impacted by the Brexit, as well as of our general ecosystem, with the support of an international consulting company. In the 6 sectors that have been studied, Paris can offer win-win opportunities to international companies wishing to develop activities in the EU 27, and more particularly in the asset management industry, which will also be affected, which will be directly affected by the loss of the European passport. France, in the sector, is the #2 global asset management hub, and currently manages over 30% of European assets twice as much as Germany, 16%. In the investment banking sector, which will also be affected by the loss of the European passport, Paris is, as from now, the leading market in the EU 27 for equities, equity derivatives, debt securities, structured financing, as well as corporate lending. But also in the insurance sector, as well as the private equity industry. Private equity, for which Paris is the leader in the EU 27 in terms of total corporate investments, twice as much as Germany, and also in the fintech. Concerning market infrastructures, the key issue concerns the outcome of the European authorities' decision on the relocation of clearing and settlement activities in the Eurozone to preserve the best monetary and financial stability for the EU. May I add that Paris has developed a strong action in the field of green and sustainable finance with the organization by Paris EUROPLACE of the first International Climate Finance Day in 2015 on the occasion of the COP21. Then we launched the Green and Sustainable Finance Initiative in 2016, renamed Finance for Tomorrow a few weeks ago, which gathers all the major players in the Paris marketplace. And for the first half of this year, Paris ranks first globally in terms of green bond issuing. Let me underline the issuing of the first sovereign state green bonds in the world by the French government at the beginning of this year at the initiative of Mrs. Royal. I would like to thank once again Ségolène Royal for accepting to support the Paris EUROPLACE action for green and sustainable finance. Ségolène Royal, President of COP21, will deliver the keynote speech in the first roundtable in a few minutes. Let me conclude now by emphasizing the necessary pursuit of the reforms which will definitely consolidate the attractiveness of the Paris Financial Center. Some first announcements were made 1 year ago, last summer, here at Paris EUROPLACE by our former Prime Minister Manuel Valls, with the presence of Anne Hidalgo, the Mayor of Paris, and Valérie Pécresse, President of the Paris region. And in particular, he announced the lowering of the corporate tax rate to 28%, the extension of the impatriate regime from 5 to 8 years, giving France the most attractive income tax rate in Europe for the impatriate, 28%, compared to Germany, 38%, Ireland and Netherlands, 46%. They also announced the adoption of fast-track procedures by the market authorities, AMF and Bank of France, to facilitate the implementation of international investment banks as well as asset managers or private equity players in the context of Brexit. Most of the expectations voiced by the investors and international financial companies, which we met over the last months and which have been met by Christian Noyer and Ross McInnes, mainly concern a greater flexibility in labor rules, a reduction of social and charges and taxes, and last but not least, more regulatory stability. Paris EUROPLACE has been at the forefront to push further reforms during the electoral campaign, and we are more than confident that the new president and the new prime minister and the government will deliver these reforms very quickly, and that they will be strong supporters of the relaunching of the European Union and the euro. Some projects have already been put on the table and some announcements made. A draft law has just been submitted to the Parliament to enable the government to issue ordinances on the simplification of labor laws, and as soon as this autumn, the government will draft a budget bill for 2018 and propose a 5-year text on public finance. Paris EUROPLACE welcomes the new measures that have been announced by Prime Minister Edouard Philippe last Friday, with the presence of Anne Hidalgo, Valérie Pécresse, and Patrick Ollier, President of the Greater Paris Metropolis. And you see the tempo, and not only the momentum, the tempo. Emmanuel Macron has been elected in May, and the general elections took place in June, and we are in July, and the measures concerning the Paris financial place has been already taken and announced. In particular, we welcome the commitment for an improved flexibility of labor rules, with the transfer of social negotiation from national to a company level, a legal cap on indemnification of dismissals by a judge, and more specifically for the financial sector, the exclusion of any bonus paid to risk-taking employees from the calculation of their severance package. We welcome also the introduction of a more attractive taxation, with a new reduction of the corporate tax to 25% by 2022, the removal of the wealth tax on investment in securities, as well as the introduction of a flat tax on savings revenue of around 30%, the removal of an extension of the financial transaction tax to intraday transactions, and the removal of the top marginal bond of the top payroll tax sur les salaires, which hinders today the arrival in France of international talents. These announcements come at a crucial time of the potential rebalancing of financial services in Europe, including to put them at the service of sustainable growth and employment, and of the strengthening of the position of Paris at European and global level. They once again illustrate the common commitments of French leaders, regardless of their political views, left and right and center, to the same ambition: a strong and innovative financial center in Paris at the service of the real economy, which always has been our objective at Paris EUROPLACE. And we are very honored that our Prime Minister has accepted to chair today our lunch session and develop these new measures, as well as the government's new ambitious plan for the Paris Financial Center. Recently, the Washington Post wrote a few days ago, I quote, "The election of Emmanuel Macron and his brand new centrist party is a game changer for France. France could win the post-Brexit beauty contest in the coming months and years. We hope so." Thank you. And I would like now to invite Mrs. Ségolène Royal to deliver her speech before the next session dedicated to the green finance. I would like also to congratulate Ségolène Royal for her last book, a manifesto on climate justice, which creates a link between climate change and world global security.